All right, let's go through the answer to problem 3 now. So this problem is very similar to the problem that we went through in class a few weeks ago. And it's just an AJAX problem, right? So where somebody types in a zip code, clicks search, and then an AJAX request is sent to a server. That server sends back some sort of response. Usually it would be some sort of JSON document that then can be used to display some information like weather information on the page without having to reload the entire page. So that's what this is doing. So it's very similar to the problem we went through in class. So let's go through the answer to part A to fill in the blanks to complete the program. So here's our HTML page that just is a representation of this, and here's the JavaScript file that goes with that page. So first thing we're doing here is we're setting up the event listener for when this button gets clicked, right? So we're saying we're finding the search button ID that goes with this button right here, right? And we're saying we're adding an event listener that is basically what function are we going to run when that button gets clicked. So we're saying we want it to be handle the click event. So when the button gets clicked, we're going to make this anonymous function that goes from here to here. It's the function that we want to run when that button gets clicked. So what do we want to do when it gets clicked? Well, we're going to get the zip code that was typed in. That's what this line says, right? It's going to go up and find the zip code field right here, get what value was typed in, and now it needs to actually send the AJAX request to the server. So first thing we have to do is make one of these strange objects in JavaScript. That's the object we're going to use to send that AJAX request. It's got a big fancy name here, but basically this just means this is our AJAX object that we're going to use to send this request. So we just have to give it a name. And you should have been able to, just by looking at the code here, say, okay, I know that that's the object we're going to use to make all the rest of these method calls or function calls. So obviously it's XHR, because that's the object that we're using to call all of those. So this would be XHR. So we have this object called XHR that we can use to send AJAX requests and get the responses. And so that's exactly what we're going to do here. So before we actually send the request, we have to say, well, what do we want to do when we receive the response? And that's what all of this is doing right here. So it's saying we're going to add an event listener for what do we actually want to do when the response comes back, or when the response is loaded. So that's what this is doing. It's saying when the response is loaded, so we get this event that the responses come back from the server, the response is loaded. So what function do we want to run when that response comes back? And that's what we're defining here, and we're going to call that response handler. So it's another function that's going to run when the response comes back. And we can jump ahead here because we'll answer in one of our next blanks. That's what's going to go right here. Okay, that's the function that we want to run when the response comes back. So this is going to be response handler. So that's what that line is doing. It's just saying we're setting up what function we want to run when the response comes back. Then we have to say what the response type is, so that the browser knows, are we getting back a JSON document? Are we getting back some other type of data? So in this case, we're getting back a JSON document. We know that because that's what this says down here. So we're just going to say equals JSON. The response type in this case is JSON, so that, again, the browser knows when it gets this back, it has a JSON document, so it can get information out of it using a JSON format. Okay, and then we're just getting ready to send the request to the server. So we open up this connection to the server that we're going to send the request to. We're going to make a GET request, and we're sending it to this server, and we're passing in the information, the zip code, to that server, and then we actually send it. So this is all the function that would run when this button gets clicked, right? I said when the search button gets clicked, we run this function, and so what this does is actually sends away the request for the weather information, and also sets up the function that's going to run when that response is loaded, when the response is received, which it basically said we're going to run this function down below when that response is received. So This function, again, this blank here is the name response handler. Okay, and that should say response handler. That's just the name of the function we want to run when it comes back. This could be named anything. Okay, so you just have to make sure that this blank would match this name right here. So those two have to be the same, because that's how we're setting up which function to actually run when the request comes back. So what happens? Let's just take a look at what this code does, which is going to help us answer part B. So this is going in now and getting that response, which is going to look something like this. And in this case, we're going to, for part B, I'll jump up ahead here, or jump up the page here. Part B, I said assume that the response received from the server contains the data shown in the sample response. So we're going to assume that this is the actual data we get back from the server. It obviously could be different depending upon the day and the location, but we'll assume that that's the response. So what is this function actually going to do? Well, it's going to go through and look at the response, get forecast 0. So forecast is an array, right? This is a JSON document. And we've got one JSON data element here. It's called success. It has the value true. We have another JSON data element here. It's called forecast. And its value is an array, right? It's got several other JSON elements. Okay, each one of those contains some information for multiple days of the forecast. So when we say forecast 0, that gets us the first JSON element right here. Okay. If we say forecast 1, that gets us this next one. If we said forecast 2, it would get us the next one, and so on and so forth. So what we're doing here is we're getting forecast 0, which is this element, and then we're getting the property called description. Okay, so we're getting description, which in this case is going to be sunny. When we get forecast 1 description, it's going to get partly sunny. So we're just getting those two values. We're getting sunny and partly sunny, storing them in a couple of variables here, one called skies today and one called skies tomorrow. And then we're putting those values in a message. Okay, it's just a string that says today will be, in this case, sunny, tomorrow will be partly sunny. And then we're actually just inserting that message into the document. So we're going in and getting this div element, forecast div, which is right there, which has nothing in it right now. And we're putting in the inner HTML, or inserting into that HTML right there in the div, the message that we just created. So the message would say, today will be sunny, tomorrow will be partly sunny, and that will go right up there into that div. So in other words, that message will appear right here on the screen. So the answer to part B, what will be displayed on the screen, will be that message. Today will be sunny, tomorrow will be partly sunny.